Something is changing across the world, not slowly enough to ignore anymore, not quietly enough to dismiss. Wars are no longer rare events, they are recurring headlines. Chaos is no longer an exception, it is becoming a pattern. And moral boundaries that once felt stable now feel like they are dissolving in real time. People sense it, even if they cannot explain it. A kind of global tension that sits beneath daily life, a feeling that the world is not just evolving, but unraveling. Jesus described something like this long before modern history ever recorded it. In the last days, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Matthew 24. But there is something unsettling about those words today. It is not just that wars are increasing, it is that they feel connected, as if the world is not experiencing isolated conflicts, but a larger progression, a convergence. And alongside it, something else is shifting just as dramatically: human behavior. The prophet Isaiah warned of a time when darkness would be called light and light would be called darkness. That reversal is no longer theoretical. It is visible in culture, in media, in conversations that redefine morality in real time. And the deeper question is no longer whether change is happening. It is why it feels accelerated, as if restraint itself is weakening, as if something within humanity is losing its balance. Ecclesiastes described generations repeating the same cycles under the sun: conflict, ambition, collapse, recovery. But what happens when the cycles stop feeling cyclical and start feeling escalated? That is the unease many cannot name, a sense that humanity is not just repeating history, but intensifying it. And underneath global headlines, another layer is emerging, one that is harder to measure, harder to report: the condition of the human heart. There is a kind of moral exhaustion spreading quietly through modern life, not always expressed in violence, not always seen in statistics, but revealed in choices, in entertainment, in shifting definitions of right and wrong. The Apostle Paul wrote in Romans 1 about societies that exchange truth for desire and clarity for confusion, not overnight, but gradually, step by step. That description feels uncomfortably familiar in an age where moral boundaries are constantly renegotiated rather than received, where conviction is often replaced with preference, and truth itself is increasingly treated as flexible. But what makes this moment different is not just moral change, it is moral normalization. Things once debated intensely are now absorbed casually. Things once hidden are now displayed openly. And the human conscience, over time, adapts. Jeremiah spoke of a heart that can become deceitful beyond understanding, not because it changes suddenly, but because it becomes desensitized slowly. That process is subtle, almost invisible while it is happening, but its effects are not at all subtle. Relationships strain differently now. Trust feels thinner. Integrity feels less assumed. Even communication feels more fractured, more reactive, more unstable. And while society debates progress, Scripture describes something more sobering: a world where people are lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud. 2 Timothy 3. Not as a prediction of one event, but as a pattern of human behavior increasing over time. What makes prophecy difficult to ignore in moments like this is not fear, it is recognition. Because many of these descriptions don't feel distant anymore, they feel familiar. And familiarity often dulls awareness, but it doesn't stop progression. Wars escalate on one side of human experience, moral instability rises on another, and between them,
a quieter crisis unfolds: desensitization. The human mind was not designed to process global suffering at constant speed. Yet today, tragedy arrives instantly, repeatedly, endlessly. One conflict replaces another before reflection can form. One crisis fades into the next before emotional weight settles. And slowly, something shifts inside perception itself. What once felt shocking begins to feel expected. What once demanded attention begins to compete for attention. Jesus spoke of this kind of condition when he said that because lawlessness would increase, the love of many would grow cold. That phrase carries more weight now than it may have ever carried before. A cooling of compassion, not always hatred, sometimes simply fatigue, emotional distance formed through overload. But Scripture doesn't present this as a minor cultural phase. It presents it as a sign of deeper alignment between human behavior and prophetic unfolding. And this is where the tension becomes harder to ignore. Because the question is no longer whether the world is changing. The question is whether humanity is noticing what that change is producing internally. Outward conflict is visible, but inward transformation is quieter, more dangerous because it is harder to detect. A generation can recognize war zones, but still miss spiritual erosion happening within itself.
Ezekiel described a time when people would hear warnings but treat them as entertainment rather than instruction. That description feels increasingly relevant in an age where even serious global events are consumed through short clips, commentary, and scrolling feeds. Information increases, understanding does not always follow, and somewhere in that gap, awareness becomes fragmented. People know more than ever, yet feel less anchored than before. Daniel saw visions of kingdoms rising with strength and collapsing with suddenness. But the pattern was never just political. It was spiritual instability beneath visible structures. Empires did not collapse only from external pressure. They collapsed from internal weakening. That distinction matters, because modern instability is not limited to one region or one conflict. It appears layered. Economic pressure in one place, political tension in another, social fragmentation elsewhere, cultural confusion almost everywhere. And beneath it all, a growing sense that systems are straining under weight they were not designed to carry indefinitely. Proverbs warns that when people cast off restraint, chaos follows. Not immediately, always, but inevitably over time. And perhaps that is what many are sensing now without being able to articulate it. A loosening, a thinning, a global atmosphere where stability feels less certain than it once did. Revelation speaks of final days marked not only by judgment, but by unveiling. Things hidden becoming visible, things unstable becoming undeniable, things temporary revealing their limits. But the purpose of prophetic warning has never been panic. It has always been clarity, to awaken perception before numbness becomes permanent, to remind humanity that visible chaos often reflects invisible realities, and to challenge believers not to interpret world events merely as headlines, but as signals of deeper spiritual dynamics unfolding over time. Because wars alone do not tell the full story. Moral decay alone does not explain everything. Even chaos on its own is not new to history. What feels different is convergence, multiple patterns aligning at once, increasing intensity rather than isolated repetition. And with that convergence comes a question that cannot be avoided. Not about politics, not about geography, but about direction. Where is all of this heading? Jesus did not describe the end times as a moment of confusion for those who are watching. He described them as a time when signs would be visible, discernible, recognizable, yet often misunderstood by those distracted by the noise. And perhaps that is why awareness matters now more than ever. Because the greatest danger is not only what is happening in the world, it is failing to recognize what it is pointing toward. As wars continue, as moral frameworks shift, as chaos becomes more familiar, one reality grows harder to ignore. Humanity is not standing still, it is moving, and the direction of that movement will eventually become impossible to dismiss. The only question left is whether it will be recognized in time to respond, or only understood in hindsight when the noise finally stops speaking loudly enough to ignore.